The twin suns of Veltar burned high in the sky, turning the red stone streets into ovens. In the center of the city, a massive crowd had gathered. The people of Veltar loved punishments. They came to cheer. They came to watch pain. Today was special. Today, a human was ordered to punish a rebel. Jalen stood in the square, silent. He wore the black uniform of a court enforcer. In his right hand, he held a leather whip. The handle was made of bone, carved with the mark of Veltar's law. In front of him, chained to a stone post, was a woman. Not human. Alien. She had silver skin, bruised and bleeding. Her long, dark hair stuck to her face. Her hands were bound. Her knees rested in dust. The court had stripped her armor and called her a traitor, but she did not bow her head. Her name was Thyra. A rebel, a fighter, a prisoner. A judge sat high above on a metal chair, his voice booming through a speaker. Thyra of the Outer Moons, you are found guilty of rebellion, sabotage, and treason against Veltar. For your crimes you shall receive 30 lashes, carried out by the one chosen for this honor, the human, Jalen Holt. The crowd roared. Some laughed. Others threw stones near Thyra's feet. She didn't flinch. The judge looked down at Jalen. Begin. Jalen stepped forward. His boots crunched on the hot sand. He stared at Thyra. She stared back. No fear, only strength. Jalen looked down at the whip in his hand. His knuckles tightened. His heart pounded. This wasn't what he signed up for. He had joined the court forces for order, for safety. Not for this. Not to hurt someone already broken. He raised the whip. The crowd leaned in, then crack. But it wasn't the sound of leather hitting flesh. It was the sound of bone snapping. The handle of the whip had broken in two in Jalen's hands. Gasps echoed across the square. The judge stood up. What are you doing? Jalen dropped the broken whip to the ground. I will not do this, he said, loud enough for all to hear. She's a prisoner, shouted one of the guards. She's a rebel. She's a person, Jalen answered. And I won't be your weapon. Without a word, he walked toward Thyra. Two guards stepped forward to block him. Jalen moved fast. One punch, one kick. Both guards dropped. The crowd screamed, confused and afraid. The judge shouted, Stop him! Arrest the human! More guards moved in. Jalen reached the post, knelt down, and unchained Thyra's wrists. Her skin was hot with fever, covered in bruises. But she still looked at him with pride. Why? She asked softly. He lifted her gently into his arms. Because no one else did. Blaster shots rang out. Jalen turned, holding her close, and walked through the crowd. The people parted, unsure whether to run or watch. One soldier raised his weapon. Another stopped him. That's Jalen Holt, he whispered. He trained half of us. If he's walking out, maybe we should let him. The soldier lowered his gun, and Jalen kept walking. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He walked through the gates of Veltar, with the broken rebel in his arms. Hours later, as the sun set behind the mountains, a small transport shuttle flew low across the desert. Inside, Thyra lay weak, but awake. Jalen piloted the ship, eyes locked on the horizon. She turned her head. You're not like them. No, he said quietly. I'm not. You'll be hunted now. He nodded. I know. And you did this. For me? He looked at her. Truly looked. You stood there, chained, bleeding, and still proud. You didn't beg. You didn't cry. I've never seen anything braver. She was quiet for a long moment, then whispered, They called me a monster, a killer, a traitor. I believe you were a soldier, he said, fighting for something they were too afraid to understand. Silence filled the cabin. But something new was there too, not fear, not anger, hope. Far behind them, the capital city burned with whispers. The human shattered the whip and carried her away, and for the first time in years, rebels dared to dream again. The desert outside Veltar was not made for life. Winds howled across the open plains, filled with ash and sparks of static. The skies were dark with red clouds. Acid rain fell in, sharp drops burning through cloth and metal alike. Jalen knew this land well. He had trained in it. He had survived it. But now he wasn't alone. He carried Thyra in his arms, her body weak, her breath shallow, but her eyes open and alert. "You should have left me behind," she whispered. He didn't stop walking. "And let them tear you apart in the square?" he said. "No chance." Hours passed. Each step through the rocky wasteland grew heavier. Jalen's back ached. His hands bled from gripping her too tightly. But he didn't stop. They reached a dead ridge, an old military outpost half buried in sand. It had been abandoned during the last Veltar War. Jalen had trained there once. He forced the door open. Inside, the air was stale, the walls cracked. But it was shelter. He laid Thyra gently on the floor, pulled off his jacket, and placed it under her head. She tried to sit up but groaned in pain. "Don't," he said softly. "Just rest." Thunder rumbled outside. Static storms lit the sky in flashes of blue and purple. Inside the outpost, Thyra looked at him with quiet suspicion. "You didn't even know my name before today," she said. "Why would you break the law for me?" Jalen sat beside her and looked at the floor. "Because I've followed orders my whole life. I've hurt people I shouldn't have, but today I saw something I couldn't ignore." She didn't speak. He added, "You were bleeding, broken and chained, but you still looked them in the eyes. You didn't lower your head once. That kind of strength..." He paused. "That kind of strength deserves more than pain." She turned her head toward him. "My people don't trust humans," she said. "Not after what the court did to us." "I don't blame them," he replied. "But I'm not the court." Silence stretched between them. Then she whispered, "My name is Thyra, daughter of Commander Vex." Jalen nodded. "Jalen Holt, ex-enforcer. Now, probably a dead man walking." She gave a faint smile. "Not yet." The next morning, Jalen stood on the roof of the outpost scanning the skies with an old pair of binoculars. Patrol drones flew in the far distance, small black dots against the sky. They were sweeping the wasteland. He cursed under his breath and climbed back down. Thyra was awake, sitting up now, her skin slightly brighter. Her body healed fast, another gift of her alien bloodline. "You shouldn't be walking yet," Jalen said. She looked at him. "I won't let you die because of me." "I've already chosen this path," he replied. "Whatever comes now, we face it together." She stood slowly and walked to the table where a small power core hummed faintly. "This outpost has a transmitter," she said. "Short range, enough to send a message." "Who would hear it?" She hesitated. "If my crew is still alive, they will." He nodded. "Then do it." As she activated the console, a soft blue light lit her face. She typed a short signal, code into the system, her fingers trembling. Jalen watched in silence. "Done," she said. "Now we wait." Later that night, as the storm began to grow louder again, Jalen made a small fire from old supply crates. They sat close together, watching the flames flicker. Thyra broke the silence. "They call me a rebel, but I only fought because they took our voices, our homes." Jalen looked at her. "Were you always a fighter?" She shook her head. "No, I was a healer once. I studied science, medicine, but the court doesn't care about knowledge, they only care about obedience." Jalen stared into the fire. "I used to believe in obedience." She tilted her head. "Do you still?" He took a long breath. "No. Now I believe in people." Thunder boomed again, closer now. Jalen stood and looked at the door. "We may not have much time," he said. Thyra stood beside him. "If they come," she said, "I'll fight." He looked at her, surprised. "You can barely walk." She gave a small smirk. "That doesn't mean I can't stand." Outside, a drone hovered silently over the ridge. It zoomed in, scanning heat signatures. Inside, it saw two bodies, sitting close by the fire. It sent one silent ping to the sky. Location. Confirmed, but it also recorded something else, a human, who didn't walk away. A rebel who wasn't alone anymore. The storm outside was quiet now. Ash drifted down from the sky like black snow. Static still crackled in the distance, but the worst had passed. Inside the old outpost, the fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the walls. Thyra sat on a steel crate, her arms wrapped around her knees. The bruises on her skin had begun to fade thanks to her natural healing. But the ache inside her chest of betrayal, of loneliness, still remained. Jalen stood across from her, checking the old outpost's doors and bolts again. He moved like a man who couldn't rest even when safe. Thyra watched him. "You've done this before," she said. He didn't look up. "Done what?" "Hiding. Running." Jalen paused, then nodded. "Not like this." "But yes." She tilted her head. "You were court-trained. You knew how to break bones, how to follow orders. What made you stop?" Jalen leaned against the wall, finally meeting her eyes. "A girl." Thyra blinked. "She was 12, he said quietly. Half-starved. Caught smuggling food to her sick mother in the mines. The court sentenced her to 10 lashes. Public. Same as you." He looked at his hands, flexing his fingers slowly. "They gave me the whip." The silence that followed was thick. Thyra didn't interrupt. Jalen's voice was low, almost a whisper. "She cried when she saw me. Not because of the pain, but because she thought I'd enjoy it." He sat down on the floor, resting his back against the wall. "I did what I was told. 1 lash, 2. On the 3rd, she fainted. I stopped. The judge ordered me to continue. I refused. They demoted me, sent me to clean bodies after executions for 6 months." He looked up. "That's when I realized I wasn't serving law. I was serving fear." Thyra's voice was softer now. "Why tell me this?" "Because I want you to know," he said. "The chains they tried to put on you, they put on me first." She nodded slowly. "I believe you." He gave a weak smile. "That's more than most do." She looked at him carefully. "You had every reason to walk away, but you didn't." "I couldn't," Jalen said. "When I saw you on that platform, beaten, proud, defiant, I remembered that little girl. I remembered what it felt like, to be the hand of something wrong." He met her gaze. "This time I broke the whip." Thyra stood and walked toward him. Her steps were slow but steady now. She knelt in front of him and held out her wrist. He flinched at the sight. Red lines, scars where chains had cut too deep. "I wore these for 6 months," she said. "Not once did anyone speak for me." He reached out, gently holding her wrist in his hand. "I speak now," he said. They sat there for a long time, silent, together, in a world full of war, cruelty, and punishment. They had found a moment of peace. Later that night, a beeping sound came from the console. Thyra rushed over. The message was short, encrypted, flashed 3 times, then vanished. She turned to Jalen. "My people are alive." His eyes lit up. "They're coming?" "They're close. But they said not to move. The court's drones are swarming the skies." Jalen checked the window. A blinking red light hovered on the ridge in the distance. "We've been spotted." Thyra looked at him. "We could run." "No," Jalen said. "That's what they expect." He walked to the storage locker, opened it, and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. When he removed the fabric, Thyra gasped. It was a weapon, but not just any weapon. It was a Veltar execution staff, used only by elite guards. "I kept it when I left the court," he said. "Never used it again." He looked at her. "Until now." Thyra stood beside him. "Then let's not run. Let's show them what happens when the chains break." Jalen smirked. "Now you sound like a rebel." She smiled back. "Maybe I finally believe in something." Outside, the drone watched. Inside, 2 warriors, 1 human, 1 alien, prepared for a battle they didn't start, but would finish. The sky outside the old outpost turned a deep shade of purple. Wind carried dust and sparks across the rocky plain. The drone on the ridge had vanished, but both Jalen and Thera knew it had already sent a message. More were coming, and they wouldn't knock this time. Inside, Thyra stood by the flickering screen, her arms crossed, her jaw tight. She had just finished reading a second message, one that made her chest feel hollow. Jalen watched her from the other side of the room. "They're not coming, are they?" She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "Thyra." She looked at him, and her eyes were full of fire, but not the kind born from anger. This was grief. "They tried," she said. "They really tried, but the court destroyed the last rebel base 2 days ago." Jalen froze. "Your people, scattered," she whispered. "Maybe dead." The message came from a hidden ship, a backup signal. One of my old captains sent it just before they cut transmission. She turned away. "I thought I had somewhere to return to. But now..." Jalen walked forward slowly. "You don't have to go back to something to build forward." She looked up at him. "You don't understand. I wasn't just a soldier. I was their symbol. Their proof that resistance could work. And now, I'm just another exile." "No," he said firmly. "You're still standing. That's enough." Thyra sat down beside the old heater. "You said something back in the square. About mercy." He nodded. "It's not weakness." She looked at him. "I never learned that. In my world, mercy was a mistake, a crack in the shield. If you showed it, you died." Jalen sat beside her. "And now?" She hesitated. "Now I think maybe it's the only thing that separates us from becoming what we hate." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sky rumbled. Thyra turned her head. "When they come for us, will you still stand by me?" Jalen looked her in the eye. "I didn't carry you out of that square to abandon you in the dirt." She studied him for a moment, then asked, "What, if the price is death?" He smiled softly. "Then let them learn what it costs to kill a man with nothing to lose." Later, while checking the weapon locker again, Thyra pulled out a curved blade. Old, worn, but familiar. She ran her fingers along the edge. "This belonged to my mother," she said. "She was a general before she became a traitor." Jalen raised an eyebrow. "She rebelled?" "She refused to send children into a poison zone. The court marked her disloyal. They executed her. I was 14. He lowered his voice. "I'm sorry." Thyra looked at the blade. "That's when I stopped being a daughter, started being a weapon." Jalen placed his hand gently over hers. "Then maybe it's time you start being something else." Suddenly, an alarm beeped. Motion sensor. Jalen moved fast, grabbing his rifle. "How many?" Thyra checked the feed. 4 incoming heat signatures, all armored, moving fast. He looked at her. "Ready?" She gripped the blade. "Always." The door to the outpost exploded inward. Flames lit the walls. Jalen rolled to the side, fired twice, hitting the leg of one soldier. Thyra leapt through smoke, her blade flashing like lightning, cutting the blaster from another guard's hands. They moved together, silent, fast, deadly. One by one, the invaders fell. But then, a new figure stepped through the smoke. Taller, heavier, cloaked. In black, a high executor of the court, he spoke with a voice like metal grinding on stone. "You broke the sentence. You attacked our enforcers. You protected a war criminal." Jalen raised his rifle. The executor raised a shock baton. "And now you will pay." Thyra stepped forward. "Try me." She launched herself at the executor, striking with her mother's blade. Sparks flew, but the armor held. The baton struck her shoulder, hard. She fell. Jalen screamed her name. He tackled the executor from behind, slamming his rifle into the man's helmet. The two rolled across the floor, fighting hand to hand. Thyra struggled to rise. The executor lifted his baton. Jalen was pinned. Then, clang, Thyra's blade stabbed through the executor's armor. His weapon dropped. His body hit the floor. Silence returned. Thyra collapsed beside Jalen, panting. "You all right?" she asked. He nodded. Not bad for a broken enforcer. She smiled faintly. Not bad for a war criminal. That night, they burned the executor's insignia in the fire. Jalen placed his court badge beside it. The metal hissed and melted. Now, Thyra said, we both walk free. He looked at her. No more chains. No more running. Just us. She nodded, and outside the outpost, the wind shifted. Soft, quiet, like the beginning of something new. In the days after the fight, the bodies were buried and the blood was cleaned. But peace did not come. Not really, because what Jalen did, breaking the court's sentence, saving a rebel in front of a crowd, couldn't be erased. Not now. Not ever. The systems were already buzzing with his name. Across trade stations and mining colonies, a new hollow banner lit up. Wanted, Jalen Holt, former enforcer, violent traitor, aided a high-value rebel reward, 120,000 credits. Status, armed, and extremely dangerous. Next to his face was another. Thyra Vek's daughter, known rebel leader, classified as instigator level 1. Reward, 180,000 credits, dead or alive. Everyone saw it. Pilots, traitors, thieves, and rebels. Some scoffed, some smiled, but one group whispered to each other in secret caves and dusty tents. He broke the whip. She stood again. Maybe the fire's not dead yet. Back in the outpost, Jalen sat on a rusted bench fixing an old transmitter. He worked in silence, hands steady. His back still ached from the fight, but his mind was sharp. Thyra entered, quietly. She wore scavenged armor now, patched together from the enemies they had defeated. It didn't match, but it suited her. A symbol of survival. They put a price on your head, she said. Jalen smirked. Took them long enough. She tossed him a data pad. And they made sure to call you dangerous. He raised an eyebrow. Did they mention I'm also very polite? Thyra actually laughed. It was a short, surprised sound. You're not afraid? She asked. No, he said. Not anymore. She sat beside him. There's talk, she said. My people. What's left of them? They're listening. To what? You, she said simply. To the human who carried a rebel from the court square, broke the symbol of punishment, and dared to walk through the guards like they were ghosts. Jalen looked at her, unsure. They think I had a plan, he muttered. Truth is, I just couldn't stand there and do nothing. Thyra nodded. That's exactly why they believe. Later, they watched the stars from the rooftop. The desert wind was quiet, but something heavier filled the air. I used to hate the stars, Thyra said. Every light up there felt like a lie. They looked peaceful, but down here it was always pain. And now? Jalen asked. She shrugged. Now they remind me someone else is always watching. Jalen looked at her carefully. You mean hope? She didn't answer. Not yet. That night something strange happened. A message came through the backup signal. Old rebel code nearly forgotten. Jalen read it aloud. If the whip breaker still stands, we are ready to stand again. Location, Dust Point Crater, come alone. Thyra's eyes widened. Dust Point was one of our lost camps, she whispered. We thought it was burned out. Jalen looked at her. So, this is real. It could be a trap, she said. Or it could be the beginning of something. He smiled. Either way, I've already chosen my side. By morning, the two had packed what little they had. Jalen strapped a rifle to his back. Thyra carried her mother's curved blade. Before they left, Jalen turned to her. You sure about this? He asked. If we go to them, you won't just be a survivor. You'll be a leader again. Thyra met his eyes. I've seen what leadership without mercy looks like, she said. Maybe it's time I show them something else. He nodded. And me? You'll be the reminder, she said, that not all humans follow orders. Some break them for the right reasons. They rode out on a stolen bike through the wastelands. the red sun rising behind them. Above, far above, in orbit, a high-ranking court officer watched their movements on a tracking screen. He leaned back in his chair. "Let them run," he said. "Let the story spread. The louder the legend, the cleaner the kill." But even as he spoke, he couldn't shake one thought. Why didn't the human run when he had the chance? Because sometimes, one act of mercy, one whip broken, one rebel lifted from the dirt, is louder than any war. They arrived at Dust Point Crater just after dusk. The crater was wide and hollow, filled with broken metal towers and collapsed shelters. A once-hidden rebel outpost now swallowed by time. The wind blew across the ruins like a ghost's whisper. Jalen parked the bike and scanned the area. No movement, no life signs. "It's too quiet," he said. Thyra stepped down beside him, hand on her blade. "They're watching," she said. "If this is real, they won't show themselves unless they know we're not court spies." Jalen nodded. "Then, let's show them the truth." They built a small fire near the center of the crater. Jalen didn't speak much. Thyra stood in the dark with her back to the flame, her eyes on the shadows. Then, a soft whistle, and a single figure stepped out, a woman tall, scarred, with dark armor and a faded rebel emblem on her shoulder. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again," she said. Thyra stiffened. "Rhea?" The woman gave a short nod. "The last time I saw you, we were surrounded. I thought you were dead." Thyra stepped forward. They tried. The two embraced, brief, rough, honest. Jalen relaxed slightly, until he noticed something. Rhea was afraid. "Why did you send the message?" Thyra asked. "Because something's changed," Rhea replied. "The bounty went viral. Every bounty hunter between here and the rim wants your head, and the humans." She looked at Jalen. "You should have run." "I did," he said. "Straight into trouble." Rhea's face darkened. "You don't understand. This isn't about soldiers or squads anymore." She stepped closer. "They've sent him." Thyra blinked. "Who?" Rhea spoke the name like a curse. Kavik the Iron Hand. Jalen's eyes widened. He knew that name. He had trained under him. Kavik wasn't just an enforcer. He was the executioner, a living legend inside the court. A man who didn't follow orders. He was the order. Silent. Unstoppable. Unbreakable. Jalen whispered, "If they've sent Kavik, they don't want to capture us." Rhea nodded. "They want a message. A clean kill. No witnesses." Thyra gripped her blade. "Then we give them something else." That night they prepared. They laid traps across the crater paths, wired explosives to collapsed buildings, charged old drone batteries for makeshift pulse bombs. Jalen checked every corner 3 times. Still, deep down, he knew. It wouldn't be enough. Just before sunrise, the wind stopped, the fire went out, and the sky shifted. A black dropship descended like a falling shadow, silent, controlled, graceful. When it touched the ground, the doors opened. Only one figure stepped out, tall, armored in black and silver. His face covered by a smooth metal mask. Kavik. He said nothing. He walked through the crater like a ghost. Jalen stepped forward. "Kavik!" The executioner stopped. Jalen raised his voice. "It's me, Jalen Holt." Silence. Then, a deep, cold voice from behind the mask. "You broke the sentence." Jalen nodded. "Because the sentence was wrong. You betrayed your rank." "No." I remembered what it meant. Kavik stepped forward. "Then die with it." He moved like lightning. Jalen barely blocked the first strike. The force of it sent him flying backward. Thyra leapt in, blade flashing. Kavik caught her midair, slammed her to the ground. She rolled, gasping, and stood again. It wasn't a fight. It was a storm. Jalen and Thyra attacked together, fast, coordinated, but Kavik was faster. Every strike he made was brutal, perfect, every counter flawless. Until a crack. Thyra's blade connected with his mask. cracking the edge. He paused. She whispered, "You bleed." Kavik turned to her. We're designed to break." She stood tall. "Then your designs failed." Jalen charged from behind, plunging a plasma blade into Kavik's back. Sparks flew. Kavik roared, not in pain but in rage. He spun and knocked Jalen to the ground, then raised his arm, charging a kill shot. A blaster formed from his wrist. But before he could fire, boom! A trap went off behind him, an old pulse mine Jalen had planted earlier. The shockwave slammed Kavik against the crater wall. He collapsed, armor sparking, limbs twitching. Silence. Jalen crawled over, breathing hard. Thyra stood beside him. Kavik's body was broken, but not dead. Jalen raised his weapon, but Thyra touched his arm. "No." He looked at her. "We let him live?" "We show them we don't need to kill to win." Jalen hesitated, then lowered the weapon. They dragged Kavik's body to the ship and launched it back to orbit, crippled but breathing. A message to the court. We don't run. We rise. Later, as dawn broke over the crater, Jalen sat beside Thyra, on a broken tower. "You stood against him," he said. "I thought I'd be the one saving you again." She looked at him, proud. Not this time. The sun rose slow and gold over the Dust Point crater. Smoke still floated in the sky. Pieces of shattered armor and scorched metal littered the ground. The wind carried the scent of battle, but not of defeat. Because for the first time in years, a rebel lived, and a court executioner didn't finish the job. Thyra stood on a broken platform high above the crater. Her hair moved gently in the breeze, her eyes locked on the horizon. The cracked blade of her mother hung on her back. Behind her, small groups of survivors began to arrive. Old rebels, young fighters, outcasts. Some came in secret, others marched straight through the wasteland. They had seen the signal. They had heard the whispers. The girl with the chain still stands. The human walked into death and came back with fire. And now they had come, not just to watch, but to follow. Jalen stood beside a rusted post, wrapping fresh cloth around his arm. The bruises from Kavik's strike still hurt. His ribs felt cracked, but when he looked at Thyra, he didn't feel broken. He felt proud. Rhea approached, nodding toward the crater. "You started something," she said. Jalen gave a tired smile. "Didn't mean to." "Doesn't matter," Rhea replied. "They need it." She looked at Thyra. "They need her." Later that day, Thyra called the crowd to the center of the crater. Dozens gathered, some armored, some barefoot, all silent. Jalen stood at her side. She raised a single chain above her head, the one they had used to bind her wrists in the court square. She dropped it in the dust. "I was a weapon," she said loudly, "made by war, shaped by pain, marked for execution." She pointed at the sky. "They tried to silence me, to break me." She looked at Jalen. "But someone stood between me and the lash. A man with nothing left to lose. A human, trained by the same court that hunted me." Her voice grew stronger. He shattered their whip, not because he had to, but because it was wrong. She paused, breathing. "And now I stand because of him." She turned to Jalen, knees bent, head low. "I ask you to finish what you began. Not as my protector, but as my partner." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Jalen blinked. "What are you doing?" Thyra stood, eyes fierce. "A vow of chains once bound me to death. I want a vow now that binds me to life." She reached out. "I fought for freedom, but I want to build something more. With you." Jalen stepped forward, took her hand, and nodded once. "I swear it," he said. "By the blood I spilled, by the whip I broke, and by the sky that watched it all. Whatever future you walk into, I'll walk with you." The rebels shouted, not in fear, in hope, because in a place where chains once ruled, a rebel queen and a whip breaker had made a vow, not of war, but of unity. Later, as stars filled the sky, Thyra sat beside Jalen on the rooftop of the old outpost. She held the broken whip in her hands. "We could melt it down," he said. "No," she replied. "We'll bury it beneath the flagpole. Let it remind them what started this." Jalen looked up. "What happens now?" She took a breath. "We build, we defend, we speak. And when others rise, we stand beside them." She looked at him, her voice softer now. "They called me rebel, criminal, weapon." He smiled. "And now?" She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Now I am free. Because sometimes the strongest revolutions don't begin with blood. They begin with mercy and a vow made between two souls, one who had every reason to obey and one who refused to kneel."